Welcome to Media Types with me, Robert Shepherd. I'm joined by Sammy Nourmand, founder of Plan 9 Consultancy and former senior executive at Keshet International and DCD Media, to hear about his remarkable journey from very humble beginnings to senior roles across the international television and distribution industry. Hello, Sammy, and welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Morning, Rob. Things are good.
Excellent. We were planning to do this podcast a few months ago, but then you went into hibernation for a month for the World Cup, didn't you?
Yeah, it's one of the perks of working for yourself. I managed to watch lots of 4 a.m. kickoffs and stuff, but I'm just an absolute World Cup nut. World Cup and Olympics, I kind of stay up all hours.
Really? And a supporter of Iran, I believe.
I am. It's it's an odd one, but I'm a refugee. I came over from Iran when I was 8 years old in the late 1970s, and
Wow.
I was very graciously accepted into the hands of this country. But when it comes to sport and football, for some reason, my allegiances are still very much with Iran.
Fantastic. Is Farsi your first language then?
Yes, it is. It is.
Yeah.
Although as I've got older, it's become more broken. But I do speak Farsi.
So if and when you ever go back, can they tell that you're not from there anymore, kind of thing? Or
I've been told I speak with an English accent.
Interesting. Okay. So you had some major jobs in TV, which we're going to talk about a bit later, and your consultancy, which you run at the moment.
Yeah.
But you went to university in the UK and went on to become an accountant. So how did that happen?
Well, it's that sort of uncertain thing when you're a teenager. I left school, had no idea what I wanted to do or what I was going to do, so I thought I'd go to university. I left university and I had no idea what I was going to do, so I just sort of, when I finished, I applied for a few jobs, and the first one I got was in an accountancy firm.
Right.
So I spent a couple of years doing that. Decided it wasn't for me, and I kind of wanted to go off and open a bar on a beach somewhere and kind of barbecue in the evenings. But
Did
then
you?
no, because reality hits.
Right.
So I found a job on the British Comedy Awards for 6 weeks in 1993. And the rest, as they say, is history. I went on to become a production accountant and then a finance controller and the finance director, and then sort of like managed to get wider management roles through that. I was very fortunate.
So you didn't harbour any ambitions to work in TV at the very beginning?
No. I always tell my kids, life finds you. You don't need to go chasing. And sort of I accidentally fell into it. My very first head of production, I remember in the interview, Susie Dark said, "Why do you want to work in TV?" And I had no idea what to say. And I looked around and I kind of saw a few unshaven faces and looked at the office. I said, "Because the walls are yellow and I don't need to shave." It was quite a change from stale accounting practice. But, it was good experience.
Did you prefer the production side or the managerial side of TV?
I've got to tell you, my life has become more corporate in the last 10 or 15 years. But at heart, give me a set of production accounts to do, and I will probably be happier than anything else that I will do.
Okay, so you worked at DCD Media with some big names. David Elstein was there at the time, I believe. And I remember when I was a reporter how whenever a big job came available at any broadcaster, his name would always be thrown into the ring. It'd be, front page a lot of the time. And you also worked with the great David Green, who's a dear friend of mine.
Yeah. I've been very fortunate to have some great mentors. I worked with David Green for 14 years, so he's probably the longest work collaboration I've had in one continuous place. And David Elstein he was an interesting guy. I think I learned a lot from David Elstein. I sat on a board where David Elstein was the chairman, and I noticed that there was never any voting of any kind, and I sort of challenged him on it one day. And he said to me that, his job as a chairman is to find consensus in the room.
Okay.
And it was an eye opener because I kind of realized that actually finding and building consensus is the best way of managing businesses rather than giving top down diktats.
Yeah.
And that one line had a huge effect on the way I sort of turned from a young firebrand into an older, more sort of chilled kind of manager.
And what did you learn from David Green?
Oh, David, it's David is a force of nature. I mean, he never stopped. He was an unbelievable networker. He was David was weirdly, again, the same way that I tell you I'm happiest as a production accountant. Although David built and ran this company and then became CEO of DCD Media, at heart, David's always happiest when he's directing.
Yes.
Uh, but no, David's become a great personal friend. I've been very lucky to have what I would probably call industry luminaries or grandees, as David likes to be called. Um, and you learn a lot from being around these people, both in terms of how to behave and how not to behave. Uh, but I used to play tennis with David for a period, and he always used to say that if I win and Manchester City won on a Saturday, it would be a good week for September films. But those were the sort of the old days of City where they didn't have the rich ownership, and I was a bit younger, so I used to beat him at tennis. So I suspect he didn't have many good weeks at September during that period.
But he is a proper City fan, though, because I like to remind him that there's no lineage between the new club and the old club, is there? They're completely different. There's no connection because the stadium doesn't even belong to City. The money that's coming, and they nearly got relegated out of Football League altogether years ago. And a lot of those fans that used to go to those games can't afford to go anymore.
I think that's part and parcel of football nowadays, isn't it? It's kind of becoming
Yeah.
expensive and middle class.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think possibly one of the worst career moves I ever made, talking about City's dire days in the past, was David features in a Colin Schindler book called Manchester United Ruined
Yeah.
My Life. And it was just about when they'd been relegated to the third tier of football. And I went into the office and I said to him, "So David, I see Port Vale ruined your life." Uh, he might still harbour that against me. But no, I mean, David wore his heart on his sleeve.
Yeah.
There's a lot to be said for it.
Then you moved on from DCD Media and you made an interesting move to Keshet International, the European arm of the Israeli broadcaster. Is that right?
Yeah, so Keshet is Israel's biggest commercial broadcaster. And around 2011, 2012, they'd had a show called Prisoners of War,
Yeah.
which had been picked up as Homeland,
Okay.
basically. And that had given them sort of this massive international profile. So, off the back of it, what was a small formats and distribution business was transformed into a very exciting and growing uh, international production company.
Right.
And at the time, I happened to be lucky enough to come across Alan Struzman. I think the whole world wanted to work for Keshet. There was a big talent show called Rising Star,
Right.
and I think it had sold off paper to something like 25 countries.
Wow.
It was one of the fastest selling formats at the time, and I'd never worked on a big talent show, so my it was quite exciting. So when the opportunity came to kind of work on a big talent show, I grabbed it with both hands. The ironic thing is that Peter Fincham, who turned 70 at the weekend, he's a massive Bob Dylan fan, and I was just exchanging some text messages with him because
Me too.
yeah, well, you can't go far wrong with Bob, but don't go to any of his live gigs anymore.
No, exactly. I walked out actually. I watched him at Hop Farm, and it was so awful. He was rude actually. He sat with his back to the audience a lot of the time. Then to the side.
Well, I think that's good because I think the last one I went to at the Palladium, he sat behind the piano.
Right.
So you couldn't actually even really see him from stage, apart from when he got up every 15 minutes and waved from behind the piano.
Oh,
Uh, but Peter ended up, I think, with some considerable pressure from Simon Cowell, who was doing X Factor,
right.
cancelled the show in the first few weeks of production. So weirdly, I suddenly had come to run this big talent show and had a payment from ITV for the cancellation and kind of thought, what are we going to do? And I sat down with Alan Struzman at the time and I said, we should build a production business. And Alan was very interesting. One of the things that he realized was if you wanted to be global, you had to kind of accept the DNA and the culture in every country that you wanted to set up.
Yeah.
And he was also very empowering as a boss because he kind of said, I've hired you, I trust you. My job here is to support you. So I spent 6 years at Keshet, and I've got to say, probably the first 4 years I was there were the most exciting and enjoyable period of my career. It was a blank sheet of paper.
I don't want to get too much into the politics, but it's interesting an Iranian getting a big job at Keshet. Are you Jewish?
I am weirdly an Iranian Jew.
Yeah.
There
No,
are a few of
connect.
us. But I will also say that I was the only Jew in the office.
Really?
When I joined, there were two,
Yeah.
and I think by the time I left, I was the only Jew in the building. So Keshet was never built as a company that was going to be a haven where it was going to hire Jews. It was basically we tried to hire the best people who we thought were the best fit for the company and
Yeah.
the best work. Our head of PR at the time, Laura, when we moved into our office in Camden, had this fantastic line that she came up with, which you saw at reception, and I think it summed up an Israeli company. It said, "If you don't have an opinion, you don't belong here."
It's interesting because I lived in Israel many years ago for a few months, and I don't talk about it very often, but it occasionally comes up because people will say to me, "Where were you when this happened?" So, for example, I was there when Princess Diana died, and that's the only
Okay.
reason that I remember it was 1997. And sometimes people go, "Oh, that's amazing! What were you doing out there?" And other people give me a death stare. Why were you there? I mean, was it quite tricky for you working for an Israeli company, dealing with other sort of international broadcasters and clients? Did you ever get that sort of judgmental look or stare or comment, or not so much in that world?
Um, Not too much. I remember one of the things that I didn't do was I didn't put a sign outside the office building in Camden because I just didn't want to attract any vitriol. I mean, we're just there making TV shows.
Yeah,
Um, but I think I can only remember one instance, Rob, which is um, it was with Sony. And they were quite interested. I was having some conversations with Sony, who had an office in the Lebanon,
right.
about optioning one of the Keshet shows. It might have been Rising Star. And the guy from Sony UK came back to me and said, "We really love it, but the local guy on the ground has basically said he'll be lynched if he options this format." But generally, no. I mean, people are grown up enough to know we're just in the content business, so
Yeah.
we're not political beasts.
And since then, you've gone solo. You run your own consultancy now. So, what's that called? And tell us about your day-to-day operations.
So I think the 6 years I spent at Keshet were quite intense,
Mm.
and my idea was that I would leave and I would take 3 or 6 months off and recharge my batteries. Um, and what happened was just after I left, we had this thing come out of Wuhan called the coronavirus, uh,
Allegedly.
a- allegedly, and the world changed. Um, and I sort of sat at home. Keshet actually came and offered me a consulting agreement, which ended up lasting for 18 months post me leaving. And over that period, initially, I was getting the phone was ringing during COVID quite a lot with people saying, Sammy, I really need help. I'm stuck. I don't know what to do with my lease. I've got no income coming in. Suddenly the business has gone dead. So just I don't really want to make money out of people's misery. I've had a
Yeah.
payoff at the time, so I would help them. And after a while, I had two or three clients that stuck, and I thought, you know what, I could be a reluctant consultant, or I could embrace it. So I embraced it, and I took a look at the environment and landscape in TV, and I thought, how would I best fit in? So I decided to focus mainly on early stage and startup companies
Yeah.
because, um, consultants can make a lot of money off from mature businesses and businesses on exit. There didn't seem to be really anyone that was offering that service for early stage companies. So
Right.
um, Plan 9 consultancy came about as an accident. Um the focus on early stage companies wasn't an accident, but it sort of took a life of its own. And the three strands of the business, I kind of do the consulting where I help businesses with structure and costs and sort of strategy for the future. Um, and then there is troubleshooting, which I generally don't like because it usually ends with me having to upset someone.
Okay.
And then there's the advisory side, which was never intended to become the biggest part of the business. But I started off by creating sort of business plans and investment decks and materials for companies that wanted to raise investment. And I ended up being the person that went to market and had the meeting to raise the investment. But again, it wasn't by plan. It was just by accident, and I thoroughly enjoy it.
Are you pretty much a one-man band, or have you got a team that you manage? And
No, no. I think one of the reasons that I can focus on early stage companies is that I am a one-man band. But that said, over 5 or 6 years, I've developed a network of people that I've known most of them for a long time. So there are occasions where I would parachute someone into do a specific role or job or even post me finishing consultancy. I would often say, I think that might be the person that you should hire for your accounts, or this is going to be a very good head of production. So I have a network, but the work is me.
does it bring many sleepless nights working for yourself, or does it give you a lot more freedom than working for a company?
Um, well, I think it's a really good question, that, Rob. It's a weird thing. When after 30 years or 25 years of waking up every day and going to work and doing that standard sort of 9 to 6 job, which is often 8 till 10 at night,
Yes.
um,
And
you
weekends?
and weekends, you don't realize, but you structure your whole life around work.
Yes.
So when I first started consulting, it was really strange because I didn't have that structure. Um, but as time has evolved, I've sort of learned how to work with the consulting world. Sometimes I'm up at 2, 3 o'clock on a Saturday morning because there's something that needs to be done,
Like watch a
and
World Cup match.
yeah, absolutely. And then there's other times you'll find me at a golf course at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Wednesday. So I've kind of learnt and have adapted. In terms of stability, yeah, I was used to picking up a salary at the end of every month.
Yeah.
And when you first go into the consulting world, because the income isn't regular, and it's still not regular. I mean, it's sort of, if I look at it collectively over the year, I still earn the same money, but it doesn't come irregularly, and you can't rely on it coming. But I have learnt not to worry about it.
Yeah.
As long as you keep doing the right things, and it's a very tough time in the industry at the moment. But things just seem to come, whether it's from referral or old clients coming back, or picking up new ones from work or my wide network. I seem to be okay, touch wood. So it's worked out, and I've learned to live with it.
Very good. This is the point in the podcast where I let my guests plug anything they want. So if there's anything you want to get off your chest and get on the airwaves, go for it.
um, I, God, you're probably going to get me onto some sort of kind of diatribe about how the Daily Mail shouldn't be allowed to exist.
Oh, go
So,
on.
oh no, I mean
Don't get me shut down, though, please.
no, I won't get you shut down. Talking about the Daily Mail, it's interesting. I watched a great Rick Mail documentary at the weekend. And, part of the documentary was the New Statesman, Alan Bastard,
Yeah,
this sort of,
fantastic.
and he'd created this caricature of the ultra right-wing conservative MP. Um, and what's really frightening is that if you watch that and now you watch the modern day reform or conservative MPs or headlines in the Daily Mail about hanging judges, it's actually become the norm. So his ultra right wing shocking caricature from the 1980s is now almost normal. It's what you hear from Nigel Farage and Robert Jenrick.
But hasn't that always been normal in inverted commas? It's just that social media amplifies it. Because you've always had these horrible people saying stuff like that, but it didn't really make the news because there are only so many ways you could actually make the news. It's only so many channels. Whereas now you can just go on the internet, write what you want, retweet it, and eventually it's going to end up in the papers.
So I always say when I was growing up, if I was a bit bored on a weekend, I would go to Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park, where you would get these people with fringe opinions standing
Yes.
there, and there'll be four men, a dog, a few people kind of just deciding, we're there for amusement, and maybe like a loyal band of four followers or five followers who would be there listening to these people. And I think social media has allowed those fringe opinions into the mainstream.
Yeah.
And I think it's really frightening. But so to a large degree, I agree with you that it's social media that has amplified this. But when you look at those views have become mainstream, it really is frightening.
Yeah.
So I think I think politics has shifted. I think, well, if don't get me onto populism. No,
No, please, let's do that.
well, I struggle to think, and I studied history and politics at university. Um, I struggle to think of one country that has been left in a better state after it had a populist or nationalist government.
Mm.
Um, and yet, the rise of populism really frightens me. But there are a lot of parallels. If you look at 1920s, 1930s, the Wall Street crash, the Great Depression, it gave rise to a lot of repugnant views, um, and some terrible wars and flashpoints in Korea in that history. And if I now look, we had the financial crash in 2008.
Yes.
We have had the self-inflicted wound of Brexit. We've had the Liz Truss budget. We've had a pandemic. We've had a lunatic in the States that just wants to have a tariff war with countries. Um, so if you look at which has all led to hardship and difficulties and cost of living crises. So go back, it's almost the same kind of uh, same ingredients that led to the Second World War and the rise of populism in the 1930s. And populism is very easy, where people can get up and just basically use a soundbite. That soundbite is very easy on the ears. It's easy for people to digest. But actually, where I am disappointed in our leadership and our politicians is they they are so negative in the way that they're trying to fight the rise of populism,
Yeah.
rather than actually explain to people why this has come about, explain to people why remaining in the EU is still a good thing, explain to people why the rise of Farage is dangerous to all of us. We mentioned earlier that I'm Jewish.
Yeah.
I think a Jew voting for Nigel Farage is a turkey voting for Christmas. Um, I also think a Jew voting for the Green Party is a turkey voting for Christmas. But I I think it's frightening times, and you kind of hope that the world wakes up from the Andrew Tate nonsense that educates our young folk and our children nowadays.
I need to get you back on to talk about politics.
Anytime. I can rant about politics for hours, Rob.
Definitely, because this is really interesting stuff. But we are going slightly off piste.
I'm very good at off-piste.
But just before we move on, but populism itself, the definition's changed, hasn't it? Because if you look at the old definition of populism, it's what's popular. Whereas now it's kind of what someone tells you is popular, or what someone tells you what other people should think. And that's kind of how Farage and his like fit into it.
Well, they're telling you what you want to hear, but
Mm.
I think the reality is very different to what they tell you.
But do you not find that there's no left and right in the traditional sense anymore? It's extremes, isn't it? Because if you look at the 70s, Tony Benn wanted to leave the EU. I know we weren't initially in the EU, we were in the EEC, but Tony Benn, who was Labour, wanted to leave. And the guy in the Tory party who wanted to leave was Enoch Powell. Now, on paper, you'd think their politics were very different, but actually, they met in the middle. And I'm finding at the moment that we've got so many extremes. I mean, just the way they talk about each other, like the Green Party leader, Zach Alansky, putting out that picture of Nigel Farage on the internet with the guillotine. Now,
Yeah,
we
I
can
saw
laugh
that
because we
picture.
don't like Nigel Farage, but how is that okay? It's not, because that kind of language is coming from politicians across the board. You've got Angela Rayner calling people Tory scum.
Yeah.
You're meant to be party of the people. So I don't see how any of them do themselves any favours.
I watched a great John Major documentary on interview on Newsnight recently, and he basically said, "I cannot remember the last time a politician came out and set out a vision."
Yeah,
And you actually think about it, and there hasn't been, and we've become more and more polarized as a society and a world because people gain from polarization.
they
Uh,
do.
um, and in terms of politics, so, I remember my politics tutor or teacher saying, "What's the definition of politics?" And at the time, in the 80s and the 90s, it was the art of reconciliation through compromise.
Okay.
There is no compromise nowadays. No one
No,
wants to. So it's scary times ahead, Rob.
it is very much so. I've saved the most important question to the end. You ready
I
for it?
love my wife.
Oh, happy wife, happy life. Will Spurs better 17th next season?
Well, you hope so. I think if you take a look at the last two seasons, 17th has not been an accident. If you finish 17th once, it's an accident. If it happens twice, it's not an accident. All that was masked by the fact that the Premier League is much stronger than the lower levels of all the other leagues in Europe, which allowed us to win a European trophy
Yes.
against a team that finished 16th.
Yeah, and it was a goal that deserved to win the game, wasn't it? Because it was an awful game and it was an awful goal. Was it deflected even? Or it was bundled in,
Uh,
wasn't it?
I was right behind it. I'm still convinced to this day it's a Luke Shaw your own goal.
Yeah.
Um, But
Yeah, if ever a goal deserved to win a game, that was it. I think it was awful to watch, and I'm a United supporter.
well, we had the Van der Ven clearance off the line, and I like
Mm.
to think that that was more deserving of winning the game. Uh, but I enjoyed it. I think, people say it was a terrible final. Actually, with the quality of football might not have been the best, but it was very exciting to be there, and I really enjoyed the game.
Brilliant, Sammy. Thank you very much for your time.
Rob, it's always a pleasure. See you soon. Take care, mate.